Good morning. In the words of the former reporter, author, director of the U.S. Office of Information during World War II, and a recipient of the Peabody Award, Elmer Davis, this nation will remain the land of the free so long as it is the home of the brave. By your very presence here today, you may count yourself among the brave. My task this morning is quite simple: to recite the renowned poem entitled, "My Name is Old Glory." But before I do so, I indulge you, or ask you to indulge me, but for a moment, to provide some context. The poem was originally written by a former Marine, Steve. I know that would excite you. I know. They take the hill. Army loves them for that. So, Howard Schooneber, a veteran of World War II and the Korean War. The poem paints a picture and tells the story of the past, the present, and the future of the flag of the United States of America. The history of the flag is as fascinating as the American Republic itself. It is among one of the most widely recognized icons around the globe. It has survived wars, inspired songs and poems, and have evolved in response to the growth of this great country for which it represents. The 50 stars collectively make up the Union of the United States of America. The 13 stripes represent the 13 original colonies that created America. The colors are symbolic as well. The red represents the hardiness, the valor, and the blood shed to defend this great nation. The white represents the purity and innocence of our country, while the blue represents the vigilance, the perseverance, and justice for all. The nickname was coined by 19 Sea Captain William Driver, who upon opening the banner for the first time towards the ocean breeze, proclaimed, "Old Glory." So without further ado, it is my privilege to recite for you the latest version of the poem. I swore you in when you answered my call. I am the flag of the United States of America. My name is Old Glory. I fly atop the world's tallest buildings. I stand watch in America's halls of justice. I fly majestically over higher institutions of learning. I stand guard with the greatest military power in the world. Look up and see me. I stand for peace, honor, truth, and justice. I stand for freedom. I am confident, I am arrogant, and I am proud. I am recognized all over the world. I am worshiped, saluted, honored, revered, respected, and feared. I have fought in every battle of every war for more than 200 years. I was flown over Valley Forge, Gettysburg, Shiloh, Appomattox. I was there at San Juan Hill, the trenches of Normandy, the Argonne Forest, Anzio, and Rome, the beaches of Normandy, the deserts of Africa, the cane fields of the Philippines, the rice paddies and jungles of Guam, Okinawa, Korea, Japan, Quezon, Saigon, Vietnam, and Palau. I was there at Guadalcanal, New Britain, Iraq, and Afghanistan, and scores of other places long since forgotten, but by those who were there with me. I was there. I led my soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. I followed them. I watched over them, and they loved me. I stood on a small hill at Iwo Jima, dirty, battle-worn, torn, and tired. But my soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, they cheered for me, and I was proud. At Ground Zero, America was attacked by cowardly fanatics, and many lives were lost. But like the phoenix, I was raised from the ashes by those who were brave and risked their lives to save many others, showing all of America, although blooded, I shall never be beaten. And those who would dare try to destroy me, they will not win, for I am the symbol of freedom of one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I have been burned, soiled, trampled, and torn in the streets of countries I helped set free. But it doesn't hurt, for I am invincible. I have been burned, trampled, and torn in the streets of my own country. And when it is done by those whom I have served in battle, oh, it hurts, but I shall overcome, for I am strong. I slipped the bounds of earth and stood watch over new uncharted frontiers of space. And from my vantage point on the moon, I bore silent witness to all of America's finest hours. But my finest hours come when I am torn into strips and used as bandages to cover the wounds of comrades in battle, or when I'm flown at half-mast to honor my soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, or when I serve as the blanket for those who gave it all and lie in the trembling arms of a grieving parent at the graveside of their fallen sons and daughters. I am proud, and I pray, dear God, may I forever live in the land of the free and the home of the brave, and may I forever be known as Old Glory. Long may I wave, dear God, long may I wave. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Joanie Rainey. Was that not fantastic? That is incredible. So thank you for being here. We are so grateful for everybody who is here today, and we're grateful for those who are watching from afar as well. We're live streaming this, and it is just such a wonderful opportunity. We have not done this in DC before. This is our 4th year, and we did it 3 years in a row at the National Constitution Center in Washington, DC. Or Philadelphia, I'm sorry. Let me ask a question. For how many of you is this the first time you've been to a national symposium with us? Raise your hands. Okay, please give them a round of applause. Thank you for being here. If you have been to more than one national symposium, and this is going to cue everybody that this is an interactive experience today. If you have been to more than one, please stand up. Please give them a round of applause. Oh, stay standing. If you've been to more than 2, please stand up. And just stay standing. James is just standing over there by the door. Stay standing. You can sit down if this is not your 4th symposium. Thank you very much. We have quite an experience for you today. We always want it to be interactive, but let me just give a little historical setting. I mentioned that we had been in Philadelphia, and because of the programming that First Amendment Voice does, we intentionally wanted to take it outside of the Beltway because of the polarization going on in our country and get away from the divisive rhetoric and have real meaningful conversation about serious issues. And do you know what happened? People in Washington kept saying, please come, bring it here, we need this. And we've done some programming here, but just not the Symposium programming. So we said, okay, we're going to go to DC for our 4th annual Symposium. And everybody in Philadelphia said, wait, no, what are you doing? And so we worked a deal, and we said, we promise we will come back in 2020 for the 5th annual Symposium to Philadelphia. But we told people in DC we wanted to give them the experience if they were unable to travel to Philadelphia. And so here we are. Does anybody know what is within a couple steps distance from this location where we are? I know some people know. It's Ford's Theater. Ford's Theater. And a gentleman named John Wilkes Booth escaped down the very alley behind you after assassinating President Lincoln. And today we're going to talk about polarization. And that is the historical context that we find ourselves in, ladies and gentlemen. We have some just wonderful speakers lined up for you. And I'm just so grateful for their willingness to be here with us and to share with us. And so from that perspective, I try to approach every day with First Amendment Voice from the perspective of gratitude first. And some of the people sitting in this audience have influenced me profoundly in that regard and boosted my spirits when sometimes I think about the state of discourse in our country. But because of their example, I'm actually a happier person as a result. I'm happy about being able to do what I'm doing as executive director of First Amendment Voice, because I know it's the right way for me to be serving the country, having taken off my uniform and been contemplating what do I do next. And so many veterans are in that space. They take off their uniform after years of service, and they want to continue to serve, and they're just looking for the right approach to doing that. So gratitude is how I try to start every day with First Amendment Voice. I want to do a little show and tell because I'm sure you've all looked at what you were given, but I want to take the opportunity to let you know what you have in your folder. And I'm going to start with this fold-out right here, this handout. Gary L. is going to give a special presentation after our keynote speaker speaks. And that is something you can take home to remember his performance by. You've also got this document, 232 years old. And on the back of that has all our channels, in case you're not following us on, and it happens to suit the way you consume information. You can find us more of what we put out content-wise there. We also gave you, First Amendment Voice programming tends to resonate with people who read books. I know that might seem odd that people actually still read books nowadays, but we thought we would give you a bookmark to remember this experience by, and hopefully you put it in a book that resonates with the type of work that we do. We've also got a flyer on next year's symposium in there so you can mark the date. But I'd also let you know, in case you haven't seen, if you flip to the middle of your program, that is today's schedule. We're about 15 minutes behind, for the most part, we stay on track, but we were having some technical difficulties trying to go live. And so we wanted to delay as long as possible to, one, give you a chance to meet each other more and get some coffee, but also to get our live feed going for the outlying audience. I would like to mention to that audience on Facebook Live, we are truly grateful that you're able to be here and experience this opportunity and listen in. You are not able, we want to give you the capability to ask questions in the future. Unfortunately, only the people seated here today are going to ask questions of our speakers, but in the future we will have that possibility. So if you are out there, you need to figure out a way to get to the programming in person for the next opportunity. But we really appreciate the folks at distant stations who are listening in. And feel free to use the Twitter hashtag for any of the folks in the room or out there that are interested. Find Your Voice is the hashtag for this symposium, and it has really resonated with a lot of audiences this last year as people are concerned about either retribution, should they offer their opinion in the public space, or some people don't even feel that it matters, which is almost worse. Apathy and fear, right? That why bother, because nobody's going to listen to me anyway. And both of those are really dangerous trends for our way of government, for a republic that depends upon the vibrancy of its citizenry. And so please use the hashtag if you want, and if you're on Twitter, and feel free to do that live from the audience today as well. But we are going to get into the program now, and I just want to introduce our keynote speaker, Bonnie Carroll, and you've got her bio in your program, and feel free to read that. But I just want to let you know how blessed we really are that Bonnie is here with us today. She has been all over the world just in the last week or so. Her schedule is just really intense, as I'm sure some of you out there have difficult schedules as well. I'm not sure anybody matches your schedule, though, Bonnie. She is doing incredible work leading the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors as the executive director, and not just here in the United States, for families that have suffered tragedy, military families who have suffered a tragedy or loss, but she's taking her programming globally. And for just one example, and when we're talking about polarization, it is hard to find somebody that will disagree with helping war widows, right? You sort of check your politics at the door when you're thinking about an issue like that. Well, when Bonnie takes widows from the United States to go meet with widows in Afghanistan, I am sure she can tell you they are speaking a common language when they come together and share over loss. And then most importantly, what can we do to move forward? What is the way to carry on and maybe contribute to others, which she has devoted her life to doing out of a tragedy that she suffered. So it is my extreme honor and privilege to invite Bonnie up to the stage. And please give her a hand. Sorry.
Oh, good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome. It is a great honor and a privilege to be here today as we celebrate our freedoms and our freedoms of assembly and our freedoms of speech. This gathering represents the exchange of ideas, and our commitment to the ways we can work together to truly make a difference in this world. I believe strongly in connection and in dialogue, as it has been one of the ways that our organization, the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, has facilitated healing. Yes. Great. Technical difficulties. Great, thank you very much. I love having help. It's wonderful. Is that? Let's see, what would happen if I did that? All right, it's a nice shade of blue. I kind of like it. Let's just go with that. All right, well, I'd love to share with you more about what our mission really is about. I believe strongly in connection and in dialogue. It's been one of the ways that our organization, the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, has facilitated healing among those affected by loss in the military. We create connections based on shared experiences. We know that the healing power of storytelling, of putting words to the sharpest hurts, will make a difference in a life. We know the transformative power of the dedicated listener. We carve out safe spaces for the family that we formed. We create a place where people can come together and put words around the deepest grief. This exchange, this peer support, this way of claiming space and experience with words and community is what creates bridges between people on different sides of the same coin. It closes the chasm of our circumstances. In considering the way our remarkable community has evolved, I can't help but think of what the opposite would be. Both world wars, as it turns out, have resulted in territories known popularly in common language as no man's land. Places where the only shared space, the only common ground, is a desolate expanse between camps. In World War I, no man's land was the term used by soldiers to describe the ground between the two opposing trenches. It was a lonely swath, delineated by barbed wire and littered with minefield, obstacles, and the detritus of protracted conflict. It's worth noting that no man's land existed where the fronts were static. On these battlefields, there was little hope of advancing the cause. Then, years later, Berlin found itself bitterly divided between East and West Germany, and another zone of division was created. Once, arguably, some of the most highly militarized land in the world, the 300 meters between the Berlin Wall and West Berlin delineated more than geography. It marked the area between democracy and autocracy, the space between communism and capitalism. No man's land was a physical representation of the ideological and political impasse that heralded the Cold War. It separated families. It quite literally split a city into us and them. No man's land is where we don't want to be, because it is a hopeless place, a place where there is no room for give and take. No man's land is the uncrossable space between opposing sides that results in the most bitter entrenchments. It's a positional standoff and an ideological stalemate. It's where for and against are absolute, where other is the only definition. It's not where freedom thrives. We are here today to live in the place where talking, listening, and institutions and civil society result in problem solving. I believe there is magic waiting for us all in the middle ground, where there is room for peaceful, non-threatening exchange. In fact, I believe dialogue can change the world. I've seen human connection change the lives of war widows in Afghanistan, Iraq, America, in places like Yemen and Ukraine. I've seen human connection and shared experience unite people across widely varied political affiliations, socioeconomic status, and educational backgrounds. I've been part of the change that happens when freedom of expression gives way to freedom to heal and to grow. And I am not the only one. We gather here today to share best practices, to learn from each other, and to create life-changing connections. We're here to advocate, to investigate, to challenge, and to champion. We've come together to honor the legacies of brave men and women with action and integrity, to follow through when others can't or when others won't, to give peace builders the tools they need when the global situation changes. 25 years ago, when my Army husband was killed along with 7 other soldiers, I did what so many of you have done out of your own journey of service and your own pain of sacrifice. I saw a need, and I did my best to fill it, providing hope and healing to all who are grieving the death of a military loved one. The organization I founded, TAPS, is a family providing grieving military families with a compassionate network of support and critical resources. And in a quarter century, we have never wavered from that mission. Through TAPS, families become part of a national network of peers, of those who understand, who listen with an open heart and without judgment. It is the best of what we can do in our community. So it's not just learning to survive, it's learning to thrive, to become stronger in the broken places, to serve others who are on this journey with us, to fearlessly go into that no man's land and find the hope and healing that will transform lives now lived in legacy. One of our bereaved mothers whose son was killed in Afghanistan came up to me recently at a TAPS event. And with this moment of epiphany, she looked at me and she said, we're not here because they died. We are here because they lived. That is our legacy, to honor the lives lived in bravery, who have overcome the polarization, who have stepped into the no man's land. Each of you here today is in some way connected to this mission. It's in your heart and it's in the fabric of who you are. Some of you serve on the front lines of advocacy and care, and some of you support those who do. Every day, we are shown the ragged edges of our struggles for stability. Every day, we realize that unity of purpose cuts through persistent impediments and helps empower those less fortunate. Everyone here today is present not just because of a desire for peace, but because of war. And while war is waged by nations, it is fought by individuals. It pulls apart families and it uproots communities. While the politics of war have convinced us that war is inherently political, the losses of war teach us that war is, in fact, about people. After examining the research on how to best recover from trauma and conflict, it is our belief that the people who are living in and have lived through conflict and the loss of war can best teach us how to turn the devastations of war into the global peace we are all seeking. For it is the bereaved, the orphans, the widows, the veterans, and the refugees who have witnessed the very best and the very worst of humanity and have been forced to rebuild not only their countries, but their own identities. Although every culture and country has constructed monuments and created rituals on how best to honor those who have served and sacrificed for the freedoms of their country, very few have given a free voice to their loved ones who are left behind, grieving their deaths and struggling to make meaning of their loss. You might find it interesting that a longstanding organization of war veteran families, the American Legion Auxiliary, has as its mission to promote peace and goodwill on earth. I think that's lovely. It's followed by this wonderful explanation that the men and women of the Legion and the women of the auxiliary know well the ghastly futility of war. We know that war brings only misery to any nation which engages in it, to the victor as well as to the vanquished. With the lessons of war constantly in mind, we pledge ourselves to promote peace and goodwill among nations. We've worked steadily in the cause in the faces of forces which have sought to sow enmity and war throughout the world. So it's not only about fostering physically secure nations, but free and economically prosperous and stable societies as well. It's those freedoms that each one of you here today are elevating. Zainab Salbi, founder of Women for Women International, wrote so eloquently, "Modern warfare is no longer confined to battlefields, and its consequences reach far beyond military targets. With its life and death, political consequences, collateral economic damage and stress on the social fabric of every community in its wake, war leaves an indelible mark on every man, woman, and child it touches. Because of this, we can no longer talk about post-war development, democracy, and freedom in a vacuum. We must listen to families who are working to ensure that there is food to eat, water to drink, and hope to spare. Sustainable peace, democracy, and economic development depend on their social, political, and economic participation. Peace, real peace, means that people speak freely, that there are schools for children to attend, that there's safe communities for them to live in. Peace means having 3 meals a day, a job, and a home to come back to. These are the triumphs of sustainable peace and stable societies, and they would not be possible without families participating at every level, from the family dinner table to community leadership to key roles in government. People must heal if they are to move forward with their lives. Healing and reconciliation is essential to basic life satisfaction and fulfillment. Healing is also essential to prevent future violence. TAPS has embarked on an effort to transform the grief of war into post-traumatic growth. And in 2018, we brought together representatives from 19 different countries. These were the war widows, the mothers, the children who have suffered greatly in the defense of their homeland, who came together to put aside politics and build a global community. After a week together, we developed a declaration which we all ceremoniously signed. And an excerpt from that is very simply, "Be it known by all, we, the families of those who have died in the cause of freedom, stand together in the light of justice against all those threatening the peace of our world. We unite with great purpose and great pride in our heroes' selfless service. We pledge to continue as our living legacies in honor of their sacrifice to heal our hearts and raise generations in peace, freedom, and stability. The families of our deceased military are hereby united as a global community interdependent upon one another, committed to go beyond borders, rise above political or religious differences, transcend political barriers, and unite with one voice in hope and healing. So today, we stand together in our acknowledgement of the universality of hope and freedom, our respect for all who have sacrificed for freedom, and our dedication to peace. We know that beyond the trial and the triumph, there falls a shadow. This no man's land is where help is needed and where resolve is forged. A place of critical vulnerability, of determined transcendence. The shadow is where we operate because it's where we are needed. It's a grueling, uncertain, and sacred place. We come together here at this symposium on this day of international peace to remember what freedoms are granted to us and to honor the cost of war and the price of peace. We're here today not because we have not been defeated by war, grief, terrorism, mental illness, or the limitations of the human body. We're here because someone else wasn't defeated by those either. And whether you know it or not, whether you feel the call to purpose now, or whether you are here trusting that you will find it in these sessions, what you are doing, what you are choosing to do with your life and your desire to take the human race forward is profoundly important. Because you raise each other up, you keep alive the mission to be better. You enter into that no man's land, not because it's easy, but because it is hard. Let us commit to ourselves to pull each other up today, to rise above the grim finalities of flesh and bone, beyond the battlefields of men and mind, out of the rubble of bomb buildings and toward a new frontier of peace and freedom, of tolerance and understanding. We will move forward as those before us have moved forward, and in so doing, we will pave the way for those who will come after us. We will make unspoken fears of freedom and peace building faceable. We will be the best versions of the worst case scenarios. We will not be afraid to continue into an uncertain future. We will hold each other together, and we will make a difference. So today, as the world celebrates this International Day of Peace, and we remember and honor the freedoms given to us in the First Amendment, let us just remember how fortunate we are and share that gratitude with each other. Endeavor to discover new strengths in yourself. Live with a powerful commitment to something larger than yourself. Make a difference. You can do no less. My husband really was my hero, and he was a tremendously gifted speaker. And if he were here with us today, his words to you would be really simple. Life is rarely understandable, and it is often very unfair. We are all living on borrowed time, time borrowed from God. The material things in life are fleeting. It is our friendships and our family that remain. Cherish each moment that you have. Journey into that no man's land and inspire others. And if you do, I promise you, you will change the world. Thank you.
So I'm going to adjust this. I apologize for the technical difficulties we're having here today, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, I'm going to pull this down anyway. The next speaker is really somebody who was inspired by our last symposium. And so I want to bring up Gary L. to talk to you about it, but he's going to show you the result of that inspiration. And you've got his bio in your program, so I'm not going to give you much more than that. But this is one of the few flight-certified photojournalists on active duty when 9/11 occurred. He spent a lot of time doing circles over attack zones, capturing images, and that has shaped a lot of his life since then. And he's going to share with you his contest and the submissions that came in from Unity and Division and what people have captured out there around the globe. So please welcome Gary L.
give me a heads up when you're ready. We'll just wait a second here to get the cameras readjusted since we changed the perspective. Just give me a heads up when y'all are ready. Everything good? Camera's good? Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Gary Al, and I am a storyteller and an educator, but most importantly, I'm a concerned citizen. Artists are the most important members of society because they help us to envision our thought, which may not be tolerated in the social and political paradigm of our society. Art is the queen of all sciences, communicating knowledge to the generations of the world. Leonardo da Vinci. We asked our several million Instagram followers, what binds us together? What divides us? Photography is a small voice at best, but sometimes one photograph or a group of them can lure our sense of awareness. W. Eugene Smith. The overview of submissions. Unity and division. The world is divided. Nearly every segment of society is divided by everything but division itself, whether it be culture, gender, education, race, religion, and a political polarization that hinders governance. The 2016 US presidential elections created a funnel that has encapsulated the USA and left me feeling divided, exhausted, and fearful. As a professional photojournalist, sometimes covering politics, my social media accounts were targeted and trolled. I shared an image on Facebook of my 10-year-old daughter holding a Hillary sign during the 2016 Democratic National Convention. She was so excited to attend the event and show her support of girl power, as many young girls did. I taught my daughter that she can dream big and achieve great things. She believed in this candidate. The trolls did not. She was lambasted for holding a Hillary sign and believing in this female candidate. I was deeply disturbed and disgusted. This was my firsthand account where society was spiraling. And a fire was ignited when I attended the Symposium last year in Philly. I left the Symposium feeling a need to help society. As a curator for a popular photography hub on Instagram, I had a voice and I had a platform. By unifying with 6 other popular photo hubs, we had a combined following of several million followers. We all were in agreement that we have a responsibility as artists to address the important issues that are dividing the world and solve them visually. We felt that the theme of unity and division could help heal a deeply divided society. So I reached out to Kodak for sponsorship and to the internationally published Lens magazine, who agreed to interview and publish our results. I then reached out to Steve at FAV for support of the program, and here we are today. Is this hung up on that slide? Let's fix that. Okay. What did we learn? The submissions addressed the divisions more than the unity, and that was okay. The challenge was like the current pulse of humanity, and we don't necessarily have the answers. It's like what people feel right now, divided, alone, and afraid. We tapped into something, a need that people feel they have to express. And that's what the challenge was about, encouraging people to encouraging the fear that their voice doesn't matter. All of these images that I just showed were the entries. And the next images that I'm going to show were the images that were published in Lens magazine. And it'll be the winning entry as well as a short portfolio from each of those artists. Brett Pemilton. I'll let you guys read the paragraph about Brett. Kevin Rivoli. Can you read the text? Is it too small? Is it okay? Yeah. My head's in the way. I know. Let me duck. I can make these slides available following the symposium. Riza. Riza's had probably about 50 National Geographic covers. Pretty powerful, eh? Tyler James. And finally, Samuel Coram. Sam was going to come this morning. Sam, you're not here, are you? He was coming today, but I think he had a last-minute assignment here in DC somewhere, so he might show up later today. And I think everybody knows this photograph as it's become quite famous. And that is the end of my presentation. Are there any questions? No questions? Oh, we have a mic here. We do have a microphone, so we'll pass it around. Okay. Over here.
Just asking how photographers would submit photos for this.
Yeah, we launched it back in January, and since we had such a huge following, we put like announcements out on Instagram. It was almost like advertisements. And all the artists had to do was simply tag the image with Unity Wins Challenge. And then all the images were in a folder on Instagram, and anybody could peruse through them. And a lot of those images are still out there. The funny thing is, I mean, the challenge really didn't end in April when the magazine was published. People are still tagging images for Unity Wins because they feel they have to, because it's a scary place out there right now. And having that ability to share an image can help a person, so we encourage that. Any other questions? Yes.
You made a comment that that you said that people were. You wanted unity, but it felt like you got more photos that were more divided.
Yeah.
Is that still holding true over time?
Yeah, I think it kind of parallels. What am I trying to say? I think it parallels how people feel. I mean, society is divided. I mean, do you feel like you're more connected now than you were 2, 3, 5, 10 years ago? Or do you feel more divided today than you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago? So yeah, I think that the entries definitely reflected how people feel. And 95% of the images submitted were representations of division And I would say out of that 90%, I would say 80% were women that felt like they were being targeted. So, and it's funny because professionally, it's a male-dominated profession. There's a lot of male photographers out there. But when it comes to something this personal, it was the women that were photographing, their feelings and sharing them with the world. And hats off. Any other questions? Over here.
Was there a particular image that stood out to you or that moved you the most, and why?
Yeah, there was. Let me go back here. If I can figure out how to go back. Oops. What happened? I think I lost my slideshow. It was the first image, one of the first images. It was the guy. Yeah, please. I just want to go back to the first slide. Yeah, this one here. No, the next one. This was my favorite image. I mean, this guy, Peter Zelli, is an amazing artist. I mean, some of the concepts he comes up with is just over the top cool. He's a great artist. But the symbolism behind his imagery is pretty wild. I mean, there's a lot of different things happening in this image. I mean, do I have to explain what's happening here? I mean, he's got an AR-15, he's got a Playboy bunny, and I mean, it's just a really interesting image. But I tend to appreciate more of the fine art aspect of photography, at least when it came to this challenge, because I've spent my career doing hardcore, documentary kind of things. So when I see something this cool and this funny and this creative, I kind of value that. Because it's a tough topic. So if you can, take it and spin it and, illustrate it in a creative way, I really respect that. So, questions? Over here.
I know a lot of things have to come together, permissions, et cetera, but what about a book? And I understand that's a big project and you have to have a lot of things align in terms of resources. But that's a powerful story to tell, especially with the quotes associated, the bios of the photographers, et cetera.
It is. I mean, it definitely would make a good book. It would be pretty hard to pull off. Now, Unity, the magazine, Lens Magazine, is an internationally published magazine. I believe that they're published in Israel. So there were a lot of images they couldn't show, due to political reasons. So some of the selections that were published may not be the most representative of Unity and Division because there were roadblocks that we had. And that's why I wanted to show a good wide body of work during the presentation itself. Now, were there any images that I showed that you have questions about? And was the slideshow slow enough that you could follow them? And the captions, the few captions that I had. I didn't want to put a lot of captions out there because the image should really speak for itself without having the caption. So, was there another question over here, I thought?
Do you have any plan to do anything similar to this or a continuation of this leading up to as we get closer to the election in a year and a half or whatever?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it. As I mentioned earlier, people are still tagging their images with that tag. It would be cool to kind of, continue it. If it helps, if it can help heal society in any way, I'm all for it. So, another question over here.
Thanks, Gary. I
Sure.
actually have a question for you.
Okay.
Given that we're visual creatures and we can't unsee what we see, and you admittedly have covered some very difficult, very
Sure.
life-altering scenes.
Yes, ma'am.
How can you speak just a little bit to the challenge that you have undertaken to take care of your psyche, take care of yourself, sort of that the embodied piece of war, the embodied piece of pain, the painful. So how do you stay whole?
Yeah, that's one of the best questions you could ask. I mean, at an early age, right out of college, I find myself, documenting horrific stuff, man. This is just hardcore stuff, the military, government, and war, and death, and murder, and suicide. And I learned very early on that the camera is a great object or tool or wall or barrier that separates myself from the reality. And it really does work. I mean, you could imagine the most grotesque thing in the world or the most horrific scene like Ground Zero. But as long as I have that camera, I'm not there. I'm focused on optics. I'm focused on composition. I'm focused on aperture. I'm focused on light, design. And I kind of temporarily lose myself. And I'm only focused on those aspects of what can I do to create the best possible image in this most dire situation. And it works. It does become a barrier. But to be honest, to this day, I don't have the balls to look at what I shot at 9/11. The only stuff I look at is the stuff that I scanned on September 20th or whatever, September 12th. Those are the only images that I can look at. And I have lots and lots of images. I can't look at it. Because yes, the camera served as that barrier and it worked really well, but then the day after comes and I have to look at my work and then I say, holy crap, was I there? Did I see that? And I did, but I filtered it out with my camera as that barrier. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
So Gary is one of our advisory board members on First Amendment Voice, and we really value the contribution that he makes from an artistic perspective and in other ways as well. So we are going to take a very short break, 5 minutes. If you need to get up and get another cup of coffee, get a drink, use the restrooms. The restrooms are on the 5th floor. In case you didn't hear that, 1 floor down from where we are right now. And we're going to get our next panel set up. So please don't go far. Thank you.